My mom blames me for ruining her life by being born. So I asked her one question that changed everything. My mom has always resented me, but I didn't understand the pattern until I was older. Every milestone in my life came with a reminder of what she'd lost. When I learned to read, she said she could have been an English teacher. When I made the volleyball team, she said she'd had a scholarship offer for college sports. When I got accepted to state, she said she'd been planning to study art before I came along and destroyed everything. I grew up carrying the weight of her unfulfilled dreams like they were my fault, like I'd stolen her future. She told me the story so many times I had it memorized. She got pregnant at 16, the boy's family moved away before I was born, and her religious parents refused to let her get an abortion. She'd been forced to drop out of high school, forced to keep me, forced to watch her entire life collapse while everyone else moved forward. I believed her completely. I spent 18 years apologizing for existing, trying to make up for ruining her life. Then I graduated high school with honors and got a full scholarship to college, and instead of being proud, my mom looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "That should have been me. I was supposed to have that life." Something inside me finally snapped. I was tired of being her scapegoat, tired of carrying guilt for something I had no control over. So I looked at her and asked the question I'd never dared to ask before. What were you actually doing before you got pregnant with me? My mom's expression shifted through surprise, anger, and something that looked like panic before she settled on indignation. She told me the story I'd heard 100 times before, but when I asked to see any evidence of these scholarships and opportunities, she became defensive. Everything was gone, she said. Lost in moves, thrown away by her parents who'd been ashamed of her pregnancy. There was nothing left to prove what she'd lost, but I was done accepting her word as truth. I found my mom's high school best friend Diana on Facebook. I messaged her asking about my mom's high school years, specifically about volleyball and art school. She video called me an hour later. "Your mom told you she had athletic scholarships?" Diana looked genuinely confused. "Honey, your mom and I spent junior year skipping class to smoke behind the gym. She wasn't an athlete. She wasn't even passing most of her classes." The guilt I'd carried for years hardened into something else entirely. What about art school? She said she was going to study fashion design. Diana's face softened with something like pity. "Your mom got pregnant at 16, and that was devastating for her. Your grandparents were strict and religious, and they made her keep you when she wanted an abortion. That part is absolutely true, and it was cruel what they put her through. But the career she claims you stole, that never existed. She was a C&D student who partied too much and had no plans for after graduation." After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. My mom had been wronged, genuinely victimized by her parents' forced birth decision, but she'd spent 18 years punishing me for failures that predated my existence. The next day, I called my mom and told her I needed to see her immediately. When I arrived at her apartment, she was defensive before I even sat down. "What's this about?" I told her about Diana, about what I'd learned. My mom's face drained of color. "You had no right to contact my old friends, and you had no right to lie to me for 18 years. She tried to argue that Diana was misremembering, that her grades weren't that bad, that there had been opportunities I just didn't understand. I showed her the messages from Diana on my phone, the direct quotes about skipping class and failing. She stared at the screen, and when she looked up, her voice turned sharp. "You're taking the word of someone you barely know over your own mother?" The guilt trip almost worked, that familiar weight pressing on my chest. Then I realized what she was doing. "Show me one piece of evidence that proves your story. One scholarship letter, one award, one teacher recommendation, anything." She opened her mouth and closed it. The fight went out of her completely. "Stop," she said quietly. "Just stop." We sat in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "I was failing school. I had no scholarship offers. I wasn't good at volleyball or art or anything else." Hearing her admit it felt surreal after a lifetime of lies. Then why? Because the alternative was admitting I was nobody special, that my life was already going nowhere before I got pregnant. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "When people asked what I'd given up to have you, I started saying things. Small things at first, then bigger things. Eventually, I believed my own story because it hurt less than the truth." "What truth?" "That I was already failing at life before you existed. That I would have probably dropped out anyway. That you weren't the reason my life went nowhere I was." She was crying fully now. "I made you carry guilt that wasn't yours because I couldn't carry my own shame. You were 16. You deserved better than what happened to you. Maybe. But you deserved better than a mother who blamed you for her own failures." We talk maybe twice a year now, and she stopped telling people I ruined her life, probably because she finally had to admit to herself that there wasn't much of one to ruin.